Okay. Wow. So, I finally read book 16. And I gotta say, it was pretty dang good. This is gonna be a spoilery video, but I will give a brief spoiler-free review before going into details. Tui definitely picked up the slack with this one, guys. No scavengers, interesting villains, intriguing mystery, cool history bits, and lore drops. It was everything I could have wanted. Not gonna lie, it's been a long time since I've really been invested in the plot of one of these books. I think since book 13 came out, honestly. But this book genuinely had me on the edge of my seat wondering what was going on. Also, while it does feel like a solid in-universe continuation of the Wings of Fire story, it is also very unique and fresh in flavor, which is super exciting. So yeah, if you haven't picked up this book yet, you should. I, for one, am definitely looking forward to the next installation. And now we're going to head into the more spoilery territory, so this is your warning. I am going to be tackling the plot of The Hybrid Prince. So, just a warning up front, this is going to be a little disorganized, sort of a stream of consciousness style review. I made notes while I was reading the book for the first time, so I'm just kind of going over those first thoughts and expanding on them. I'll probably explore certain topics more thoroughly later on, but for today, this is my first impressions and thoughts. So, right off the bat, everything about the dungeon island, really starting when we first meet Beryl, struck me as really suspicious. The way Mulberry seemed nervous, how she shushed him, the mysterious number system and metal dragons. Oh yeah, hugely sus vibes. It was kind of giving Wizard of Oz vibes, actually. The way everyone was just pretending everything was swell and great, even though it clearly wasn't. Not to mention the bit about the ghost was pretty suspicious, too. And after some more stuff happens and Umber finds out the true meaning of this supposed island paradise, we get a little peek at Blob and what actually happened, eventually, to one of Fathom and Indigo's descendants. Guys, that's crazy. Especially since that means the prison existed, no lake, miserable, for at least over 1,000 years. And that is so sad. Waterfall really did improve things for the dragons there. I have to wonder, though, if she stopped at one point, knowing that she might go insane. I mean, Fathom had to have passed that knowledge down to his descendants. He was terrified of it. Those are some pretty big spells. I mean, think about how when Albatross made a palace, it was what pushed him over the edge. And that was a palace for one tribe. Arguably, you could say there are over twice that many dragons on the Dungeon Isle, though I'm not sure I get those vibes reading it, because there were 2 tribes sent here, and they've been having kids ever since. So it begs the question, did she stop? Because I feel like an insane animus being trapped inside the barrier would have been horrifying enough to be memorable. So she must have, I guess, or someone would have remembered it. Okay, and Monarch being here? That actually makes so much sense? It's such a fun little nod to Arc 3 without interrupting the story. Not to mention, it was affecting her motivation, not wanting to run away from another throne like the Silkwing throne. That's insane! It had to be so hard living there, occasionally running into other Pentalans, hearing how bad things have gotten for her tribe in her absence. That had to really hurt. I can't wait to see the Silkwing's reaction if she ever does manage to escape, though, and return home. That's gonna be crazy. Another thing, I kind of wondered if Snakeroot was giving prophecies, or if it was just weird Prison Island magic, so it was pretty satisfying to realize he was, in fact, part Nightwing. Also, it made Mulberry's power so much cooler. I've actually wondered before if a Nightwing hybrid would be some kind of empath instead of a full mind reader, but combining that with leaf speak into dragon/animal speak is insane and so cool. It doesn't feel too OP either. It just feels like a right place, right time kind of thing, which is great. Okay, and what? New Scarlet lore was not on my book 16 bingo card, but what the heck, guys? She poisoned a bunch of dragons? Like, how did she get even more evil, in my opinion? How does she keep getting worse years after her death? She's the villain of all time, guys. What the heck? And then, kind of skipping to the end, the resolution with the 2 dragon eggs, it's a really interesting solution. I definitely didn't expect it. Them having to wait 3 years definitely shocked me. And it's going to be super interesting to see what kind of dragonets hatch out of those eggs. Just think, one could be part or full beetlewing, bringing back an extinct tribe into the modern day. Especially considering the smallest claws line in the prophecy, I think this could be very interesting. Are we talking smallest claws like these 2 dragonets? But then if they play a big part, are they going to be POV characters? Will there be a time skip, or are we going to have a book POV'd by a baby? Does it refer maybe to the new gen, like Mink, Cliff, Bumblebee, Auklet, etc., or someone else entirely? Also, who stole that baby? Poor baby, what's going to happen to them? I am very worried about that. I have a lot of questions about the Dungeon Island in general. Like, if it was made 1,000 years before the debacle with Darkstalker, how did the Skywings forget they had Animus dragons? Because the Icewings said that they had the only ones, but clearly the Skywings had some, so did the Icewings forget? Did they not know? Were they not included in this prison island thing? How did they forget about an entire prison island? How did the other tribes forget about 2 entire tribes who used to share the continent with them? If the Icewings and Nightwings remember Darkstalker 2,000 years later, how do they forget something as insane as sending 2 entire tribes to jail forever? And let's talk about those 2 tribes, because I have so many questions. For one, it's really interesting that Leafwings come from Pyria originally. At first I was like, oh neat, they only have 2 wings, so they're kind of the weirdos on Pantala, but that would make sense if they're originally from somewhere else entirely. But then I realized the Beetlewings were there too, and I think they're the Silkwing ancestors who eventually become the Hivewing ancestors because they have silk and stuff, so that doesn't make sense. So then, I guess there's no dragon tribes that are native to Pantala? Which would kind of make sense, honestly, because if I'm remembering correctly, in an Arc 3 flashback, we found out that when dragons got to the continent, it was completely consumed by the breath of evil. So I guess there were never any dragons there in the first place? I don't know. So then, if those tribes come from Pyria, can they have Animus dragons? I don't know, have we seen a Pantalan Animus anywhere? I'm genuinely asking, I can't remember. But I don't think we have? Anyways, if they sent the entire Leafwing and Beetlewing tribes to the Dungeon Isle, how did some escape and get to Pantala? Had some already migrated there? If so, why not the other tribes? How did word of the other continent get back to Pyria? Because remember, Clearsight knew about the other continent via old stories, so someone had to return and spread the word on it sometime in that 1,000 years? Also, back to the actual Dungeon Island. What the heck, guys? They sent 2 entire tribes and changed to prison, and they knew it was wrong. They discussed how in a few generations there would be 100% innocent and uninvolved dragons there. It was coded into the system. Category 1 is family of prisoners. They knew exactly what they were doing. It's just insane to me that they did that, and that the island was then forgotten about. It's such an interesting little pocket of culture with the wild wings and all that. It's like a prehistoric island with dinosaurs, but if the dinosaurs also had, like, flying cars. The whole concept is just fascinating. I love the history and lore drops, and having a story so baked into the history and the sins of the past is exactly my jam. Not to mention, untangling how the island was enchanted and why was insane. I genuinely was so invested and had so much fun figuring out that mystery alongside Umber. That is what I would call a good application of Animus magic. I didn't think it existed, but turns out it just needed to be the backbone of a mystery prison story. And the epilogue itself was crazy too. Who is summoning these queens? Is this Jerboa again? Is this part of the whole Animus magic disappearing thing that's going on right now? Is it a new Animus? Is this some ancient part of the Dungeon Island spell triggered by the eggs hatching? Is it something else entirely? Like maybe something not even magical? Though I find that hard to imagine given the amount of coordination needed. But also, why is Kinkajou missing? Is she going to be a major player in yet another arc? Will Tui finally come back and surprise us all with a Kinkajou POV character book 13 books after her introduction? Or did she somehow get sucked along by accident? And my goodness, hasn't the poor kid been traumatized enough? Lord! So yeah, overall, it was a super fun read, and I still have lots of questions. I'd love to see a Legends book about Harmony, the Queen's Claws, and the implementation of the Dungeon Island spell. That story has to be insane, just based on the glimpses we've had, and I, for one, would be foaming at the mouth to hear more. Ironically, I don't have much to say about Umber and Sora in all this. They were there. Umber seemed pretty bland, to be honest. Basically just felt like Clay 2.0. If you replaced his name with Clay's, it would have read exactly the same to me. Which is probably my only complaint with the book, to be honest, that Umber just isn't very interesting to me. I feel like he's supposed to be the fun younger brother type, and he himself even says that a few times, but because he's being thrust into this new role of responsibility, we don't really get to see that aspect of his character much, so it doesn't really mean much. He just ends up being somewhat of a copy of Clay. Sora was a little more interesting, what with her little hints of disassociation and stuff, but neither of them were super engaging for me. I think out of the new cast, Mulberry is probably my favorite. He's just so interesting. He's so sweet, and his parents are so mean to him. While I was reading, I kept getting little hints from the way he'd talk about them and stuff, and it's like, I know we have a lot of bad parents in Wings of Fire, but geez, he seems so determined to think the best of them and be a good son, and they just treat him like garbage and lie to him, and I hate it. But anyways, he was fun to draw. He's so pretty. Umber looks too much like Clay for me to want to draw him, and Mulberry looks so pretty on the cover. Anyways, that'll about wrap this up. I didn't cover everything for sure. I just kind of wanted to go through my first impression notes from my initial read, but I definitely think this is a solid addition to the series. Exciting to see things looking up after book 15, because, As always, links to all the important stuff are in the description, so feel free to check that out. I will definitely be doing some more videos about book 16, so if you want to catch those, feel free to subscribe to the channel. Thanks so much for watching, and have a blessed week.